So we finally got another Lil Durk update with some new paperwork that's dropped, and I'm sorry to say it to everybody, okay, but it's more bad news. It is what it is, okay? I know a lot of people want to free Durk. A lot of people want Durk to at least face justice for the alleged crimes that he's committed, but unfortunately, this is an absolute chaotic mess, and all of the people involved are stabbing each other in the back. So we've got more information of Bezu being included in new paperwork, one of Lil Durk's right-hand men from THF. He is in the paperwork calling out alleged snitches that we only found out about recently. Apparently, Bezu and Durk had already been discussing before. These guys are always talking on their phones, texting on their phones, like the feds ain't monitoring the iMessages, the iCloud, and all of that stuff. It's insanity. But the first thing I'm going to show you before I read you all the new paperwork, I will read you the whole new paperwork document. I got time on my hands today, okay? But so this is like what was this, a couple of days ago? Yesterday, actually. Basically, Durk's co-defendants have been trying to, sever their case from each other. Durk now wants to get his case severed from the others. Everybody's been trying to break this apart so that they can separately go down and have their trials. The judge ain't really feeling it. So Boogie filed a motion to continue trial. He wants to have his court date. That was granted. Boogie's motion to sever from Durk's trial has been denied, and it says Didi and Brown Eyes' motion to sever is being taken under submission, but I think that is probably going to be denied. I don't think anybody's got a chance of getting this severed. So there's some kind of old news recirculating today, which we have covered this in previous paperwork, but now it seems to be official and the blogs are waking up to it. Basically, the two people, Mike City, AJ, and the other, what was the other guy's name? Marley, I think it was Marley. Mike City, AJ, and Marley, allegedly the people responsible for the murder of Stefan Mack, are cooperating. They're pleading guilty to the murder of Stefan Mack, and it is now being revealed that they are actually basically admitting that they agreed to be paid a sum of money from individual C, and essentially, it's a disaster. It's a disaster, okay? They're basically admitting that they were paid to carry out the incident. They were planned to be paid money. Defendant Montgomery Wilson further admitted under oath that after murdering Lil Pab, he collected money that had been offered as consideration for the murder. It is over with, people. I think Durk is in a really bad situation. So basically, Durk's got people underneath him that are putting up money for these murders to happen, and enforcers are paying these bounties, allegedly. Preston Powell pled guilty in the Northern District of Illinois to the use of firearm during and in relation of a crime of violence, murder for hire. For murdering Stefan Mack, among other things, defendant Powell admitted there was a cash bounty for his murder, and he participated in a conspiracy with Montgomery Wilson to murder Stefan Mack and collect the payment. It's disaster for Durk, all right? It's a disaster for Durk. More and more evidence and snitches are basically coming out to say, yeah, it was murder for hire. He was doing multiple murders for hire. And it's just going around everywhere now. It says these two guys told a courtroom and a judge they killed Stefan Mack for money that was promised to them by Durk because he had something to do with Lil Durk's brother D-Thang death. It's all in there. They're working with the feds. They're trying to get themselves out of it. It's interesting. It says the Chicago murder of Stefan Mack and the attempted murder of A.W. Alexander Witherspoon. That's the guy they tried to kill in 2019 when King Von was there with Bezu. And once again, as you're going to see, Bezu comes up in this paperwork, but he was never arrested. Don't make no sense. How comes Bezu coming up in the paperwork, but he was never arrested and he a co-conspirator in this whole thing? Anyway, I got the whole paperwork for you guys here. We're going to dig into it. I'm going to dig into everything in here. There's probably going to be a few new things. We're probably going to recap a few old things. But that is what's going on. And tell you what, before I do that, in case you haven't got much time on your hands today and you're in a rush, all right, I'll just quickly give you a preview of what we're going to be seeing in this paperwork. In case you're in a rush, all right, people say I'll be dragging the videos out. If this is all you got time for, it says the new alleged iCloud messages from Durk and THF Bezu have been leaked by the feds. Durk was warned about the cops. Apparently, this was a back and forth. It said police, and they said like who asked what's to us. And he said Dirty said ATF. People saying that ATF could stand for after the fall. That's nonsense. Okay, so apparently, okay, this is messages between Durk and Bezu, and they're talking about police, people being snitches. And I believe there's more of this in the paperwork, which I'm now going to get into, okay? But this is what's going on. So this is essentially the US government's or the states response to Lil Durk's requests to basically sever. This is the government's opposition to defendant Banks's motion to sever counts, or in the alternative to dismiss the third superseding indictment on speedy trial grounds. Now, I don't think he was ever going to get this request approved for the superseding indictment to be dropped. Okay, basically, the United States attorneys are filing opposition to Durk's motion to sever counts, and I don't think there is really a chance in hell they're going to allow this, okay? But let's get into it. So once we get into the indictment here, it does actually do a really good job of kind of recapping everything. And to be honest, it paints a pretty damning picture. I mean, Lil Durk and them, all the OTF members, like this is the picture that's now being painted by this, not an indictment, but this paperwork that's basically in an effort to block Durk's requests for him to, you know, get the superseding indictment dropped. They're going to paint the most despicable picture of an absolutely murderous criminal enterprise that are just out of control. And it's going to be pretty hard for the judge to say, yeah, let's just let this third indictment, let's just let all these multiple murders just go into the ether, okay? So let me break it down for you. It says, this prosecution arises from a coordinated gang murder. At approximately 6 a.m. on October 24th, 2024, the government executed simultaneous warrants and arrested defendant Banks's 5 co-defendants in and around Chicago, Illinois. Soon after, defendant Banks began booking international flights in an apparent attempt to flee the United States later that evening. So this paints a picture that we didn't necessarily know. There's all these rumors, and they said Durk wasn't trying to flee the country. Bro, he was, allegedly. All right? He was seemingly trying to flee the country as soon as he found out that his homies got arrested. And I think the cops did that on purpose. I think they said, let's arrest all of the OTF members and all of the guys involved. The shooters, you know, the shooters that you ain't seen before. This ain't no sneaky war. That money make them killers pop outside who you ain't seen before. Little bro ain't believing demons till little bro hop out that demon door. All of them demons, all right, they rounded him up. And they said, let's just round them up and see what Durk, let's just see what Durk does. Let's see how he takes it. And he got to booking international flights. It's very, very damning. So it says the FBI arrested defendant Banks before he could board a private flight out of the country, and he and his co-defendants were subsequently charged in the first superseding indictment, the FSI. Now, the FSI outlined the gang-related nature of Savia Robinson, aka Lil Pab's murder, and identified multiple uncharged co-conspirators who conspired to kill Taekwon Bowman, aka Quando Rondo, which resulted in Lil Pab's death. As a result, the government continued to investigate the conspiracy and other criminality linked to defendant Banks and his co-conspirators. That investigation involved with a robust legal process and the review of voluminous, that's a lot, digital records with 59 digital devices and accounts seized, including 38 following the defendant's arrest. So they're saying we locked him up. We've gone through 59 digital devices and accounts, and 38 of those, we only got hold of those after everyone got arrested. So we already had all this information in the FSI, the first indictment. And then we done got 38 devices. We cracked everybody's phones. There's phones on phones and accounts on accounts and iClouds and Twitters and all of this stuff. The investigation also revealed the co-conspirators' tradecraft, good use of a word, in attempting to evade law enforcement, including witness intimidation, their use of multiple burner phones, messages showing instructions from the enterprise members to delete communications, including Durk himself telling co-conspirators to delete this thread and start a new one after suspecting an individual provided information to federal law enforcement. This is why there's such a thing as like, you dumb smart. He's so smart that he knew to delete the thread, but he dumb enough to not realize that, bro, it's too late. You had a rat in your thread. What's starting a new one going to do? They're onto you and your devices. Everybody's devices. So it says, based on the government's investigation, the grand jury returned additional charges in the third superseding indictment, TSI. Wait. Oh, so the FSI is the first superseding indictment. Which I guess, okay, the first superseding indictment, does that mean that's the second indictment? Because it's the first indictment that supersedes the first indictment, if that makes sense. That's kind of quite some language trickery going on. Because then we're on the TSI, which is the third superseding indictment. The first superseding indictment superseded the indictment, which would just be the indictment, all right? And I don't think they want to talk about that first indictment. But anyway, it says, based on the government's investigation, the grand jury returned additional charges on June the 3rd, 2026, including a vicar murder charge, all right? That is the murder of Stephon Mack, the additional murder, which I'd been talking about for years, all right? Everybody knew about this. Anybody that followed Chicago Drill, Chiracology, all these things, they knew that allegedly Durk had been getting numerous people killed. There's more. There's more that could be coming, all right? They're going to solve the FBG cash murder eventually. Anyway, that's besides the point. There's also the double murder of J-Ski and Oil that still hasn't been brought up. Anyway, As the Supreme Court has long recognized, all superseding charges fall in the heartland of the government's duties and obligations to the public. Okay, so this is giving basically some case law saying a prosecutor should remain free before trial to exercise the broad discretion entrusted to him to determine the extent of a societal interest in prosecution. An initial decision should not freeze future conduct. What that means is that if Durk calls a hit now on me for making this video because he's pissed off that I've exposed him and all of his other murders, that doesn't mean that Durk can go, oh, but you already indicted. Oh, this was just another murder. You can't just add another murder and they hit him with a superseding indictment in 2 weeks' time for this murder. You can't say, oh, well, you already indicted me. You're adding all these indictments. I want a speedy trial. I wanted a speedy trial. You can't just throw murders on me. Well, you got to stop doing murders, buddy. Got to stop doing them murders, buddy. Got to stop getting caught for them murders, buddy. I'm sorry, but you can't just murder. Well, I've already been indicted once. It's like, I've seen some people, they be out here, they be putting parking tickets on their own car when they double park, they park illegally. Because it's like, oh, they can't put another ticket on my car. The traffic guy is going to see there's already a ticket on the car and let it go. That's not how it works. They're not going to go, oh, well, he's already got a murder ticket on him. We ain't going to throw another one on him. What, Durk can just catch unlimited bodies now because he's already been charged. Oh, you already hit me with one of these, but I need a speedy trial. That's not how it works, chum. Okay? It says an initial decision should not freeze future conduct. They might put more murders on him after this. So it says, following the return of the TSI, the third superseding indictment, the defendants indicated they will require additional time to prepare for trial. There's an asterisk there. It says, in his motion, defendant Banks states that if a joint trial on all charges in the third superseding indictment proceeds, the government has forced a continuance. Defendant Wilson represented to Judge Ordero prior to the return of the TSI that the supplemental charges of the scope described by the government to be returned in the TSI will not permit the August 20th, 2026 trial date to hold, and Mr. Wilson's pretrial detention is poised to become indefinite. Defendant Wilson, joined by defendant Lindsay, subsequently told the court in their motion to sever that he does not know yet whether a continuance will be required. The court has already indicated that it will continue defendant Houston's trial date to afford sufficient time to prepare. Basically saying, look, if you don't want more time to work out these charges, we ain't got to give it to you. If you want your speedy trial, then you can rush and try and get all the evidence together. Or you can delay it and actually get your head around these facts. But you can't just be immune to murder prosecution because you already got one trial that's coming up too fast for you to really get your head around it. So it says, pending before the court is defendant Banks' motion to sever counts 1 and 6, the vicar charges from the third superseding indictment, a request that essentially asks this court to cast aside the operative charging document so defendant Banks can proceed to trial on his choice of counts. See, that is scathing because it's basically saying what you're asking, what Durk's basically saying is that, can I just go to trial on the one murder? The other murder that I've been accused of, that you've put evidence up of, and you've got the guys that actually did the murder saying that they were getting paid by me and my team. Can we just not do that? Can I just do the one murder? Can I can we just like worry about that murder later? That's not how it works, bud. All right? You out here doing murder for hire, allegedly. Does not fly. It doesn't compute, buddy. It doesn't work. The requested severance should be denied. No chance. It's not up to you to say which murder. It's not a buffet of murders. And Lord help me, there's numerous murders. You could throw the FBG duck into the buffet. You could throw the FBG cash into the buffet. It's not a little smorgasbord of murders that you want to choose. I'm hearing there's more murders I didn't even know about that people have been telling me, hey, you do it. Hey, it's not up to you. And they're all going to get solved eventually. So they said, should be denied. The joinder of defendants and counts in this racketeering and murder conspiracy is proper, just, and warranted. So here's the thing as well. It's like you're saying, you've got Durk saying, oh, you can't just slap another murder on me right before the trial. And they're saying, well, you can't just go around here committing murders. We just found out. And then all of the hitmen in the murders and the people that are paying the hitmen, they're trying to say, oh, can't you just separate us from the trial? Like, we don't got nothing to do with what Durk's going on. Can't we just have a separate trial? This is all getting too out of hand. No, you're all in a criminal organization. He's the big boss telling you to kill people. You crash out to going and murdering people. These guys are sat in the middle paying the bounties. It's nonsense. You're all on the hook. So it says, as alleged in the third superseding indictment, the murder of Lil Pab was committed by a racketeering enterprise that engaged in, among other crimes, conspiracy, murder, and attempted murder against its rivals. All 6 counts of the third superseding indictment expressly incorporate the indictment's racketeering allegations. And for good reason. The enterprise's object, manner, and means, and the conspirators' conduct is necessarily intertwined to overlap in this conspiracy case. They're saying Durk wasn't hitting nobody on his own. Durk wasn't sliding in the rentals. Durk wasn't shooting nobody, letting his gun slap. It wasn't happening. Durk was relying on you guys who were in the organization. You want to call it OTF, you want to call it the Durk's gangbanging enterprise, whatever you want to call it. Durk wasn't, no bodies were dropping if it weren't for the hitters. And the hitters weren't just out here killing people for a laugh. They were doing it under Durk's direction, allegedly. Can't separate this. Ain't no separation. You're all in this together. So defendant Banks's, Durk's, sole basis to sever the Vicar charges is that a trial on the operative charging document would force a continuance and therefore violate his Sixth Amendment speedy trial rights. That is wrong. There has been no violation of Durk's constitutional speedy trial rights. All defendants, including Durk, requested to continue the trial from late 2024 to October 2025. So a minute ago, you didn't want a speedy trial. You wanted to look into this. You wanted to dig into this. And then the co-defendants said they wanted to continue the trial to its current date. So they're all knocking it back. And now when you get hit with another murder, suddenly, I wanted a speedy trial. Why didn't you get the speedy? We were supposed to do this last year. I was ready to go to the trial last year. So it says, when ordering each requested continuance, the court made findings of excludable time under the Speedy Trial Act, including that the case was complex and unusual. The defendants were joined for trial and no severance had been granted, and the court's broad power to delay trial when the ends of justice are served by the continuance. If the court were to further continue the trial, the court would undoubtedly evaluate the merits of the request and make similar appropriate findings that comply with the Speedy Trial Act and Constitution. The remedy for defendant Banks's request is straightforward, a continuance of the trial. For these reasons, and those set forth below, the court should deny defendant Banks's motion to sever. Here's where he fucked up. You can't delay the trial, and then in that delay time, the cops work out that you did another murder for hire, allegedly. And then you say, oh, I want my speedy trial now. You didn't want it a minute ago. You weren't trying to have it. Everyone was ready to go to court. Now you want to delay. Now you want a speedy trial when you delay the trial. It's making no sense. So they're basically going to go back over the timeline of the incident and what went on behind the scenes, okay? So for these reasons that have already been mentioned and the more background reasons to the crime that they're about to set forth below, and they're going to paint an even more damning picture, not with too much more, few new pieces of information are going to be mentioned here, but basically the majority of this really is going to focus on just painting a picture of like why Durk's so dangerous and that there's absolutely no way that he should sever because you're all in this together committing crimes together as part of a criminal enterprise. So this background is about to be damning. This timeline is about to be absolutely damning. So it says the following is a timeline of relevant procedural history. On October 24th, 2024, just hours after the arrest of his co-defendants, Durk started booking multiple flights out of the US. Very bad look. As a result, the government arrested Banks near the tarmac of a private jet preparing for takeoff. He nearly took off. And you want to sever the case. Why are you taking off? A bunch of your homies got arrested and you were booking it to the airport. And now you want to talk about let's just sever. I ain't got nothing to do with them guys. Let's just sever the case. Oh, it'd be sweet if I could just sever the case and just choose what murders I get charged with. Nonsense. November the 7th, 2024, the government filed the first superseding indictment, charging defendants Banks, Grant, Wilson, Jones, Lindsay, and Houston with the conspiracy to commit murder for hire, resulting in the death, and murder for hire, resulting in death, using a firearm, a machine gun in furtherance for crimes of violence. I'm hearing it was a switch. December 31st, 2024, Durk, Grant, Wilson, Jones, and Lindsay request a continuance and signed a stipulation to continue trial on October the 14th, 2025. So you were kind of... Yeah, it's like, let's put it back. Let's put it back to October 2025. And it says court-ordered trial was continued to October the 14th, 2025, and made excludable time findings under the Speedy Trial Act for all defendants. They said that date is fair. That's speedy enough. You got enough time to look over all the evidence. Let's all agree to this. Everyone's agreed. Durk's filed a motion to dismiss the entire case based on alleged grand jury misconduct. Now, with the word witness intimidation has been thrown around a lot, and I think it's worth remembering this because this is brazen for him to call that out. It says May 1st, 2025, the government filed the second superseding indictment, which added an additional count. So actually, when it said the first superseding indictment, I suppose that really was the first superseding indictment that superseded the indictment that had all the OTF members, not Durk. And now they're saying the second. So I've not heard the second actually mentioned. We've just heard the first and the third. So I guess there was reference to the second. Government filed the second superseding indictment, adding an additional count, stalking resulting in death. And that relates to how they were following Quando Rondo around. Wilson, Lindsay, Houston stipulated to continue the trial to January the 20th, 2026. Okay, this is the first continuance to which defendant Banks objected. So now Durk doesn't want to delay the trial. He was down to push it back to October. Now his co-defendants want to get it pushed to January. He's not down. He doesn't want to have any parts of that. So the court ordered the trial to be continued to January the 20th, 2020. This is a typo. That should say 2026. And made excludable time findings, including for defendant Banks. October the 6th, 2025. Durk, Dede, and Houston filed multiple pretrial actions. Now, what's interesting is, I think Grant is Vonnie, right? I think Grant's Vonnie, and so he's in it with these guys in December 31st, 2024. But by September of 2025, you ain't hearing about him no more. It's just these three. Okay. So these three basically were down to continue trial January 20th. Durk says he doesn't want to. He objects to that. So now it's like Durk is against his homies, and they're sort of creating this spectacle where Durk's basically trying to act like his rights are being violated. So the court ordered the trial to be continued for January 20th. Not trying to hear what Durk had to say. Don't care. We've made, fair excludable time findings, including for Durk under the US code. So Durk, Dede, and Houston, AZ Houston, filed multiple pretrial motions, including multiple motions to dismiss counts and or the case. Not going to fly. Durk filed another pretrial motion, this time to disqualify this court and all judges in the Central District and the U.S. Attorney's Office. This was brazen, basically tried to say, oh, Donald Trump appointed the district attorney wrong. We're trying to disqualify all court. Oh, nobody can hold me accountable for any kind of justice because something Donald Trump, Orange Man bad, all of that stuff, all right? So that went absolutely nowhere. Then on January the 5th, 2026, defendants Wilson, Lindsay, and Houston request a continuance and enter a stipulation to continue the trial May the 4th, 2026. This is the second continuance where Durk objects. He says, no, give me my speedy trial. The court ordered the trial to continue April 21st, 2026, made excludable time findings for the trial defendants, including Durk. So basically they're saying, look, we're pushing it back. Wilson, Lindsay, and Houston wanted to continue the trial till August 2026. Durk objected. Court said, yeah, let's do it. Fuck Durk. We ain't trying to hear that nonsense, all right? And then on April the 16th, 2026, Anthony Montgomery Wilson pled guilty. Now we're talking about Mike City AJ, right? Guilty in the Northern District. So he only pled guilty on April 16th. And this is why this is so important for Durk moaning about his speedy trial. We're getting the people that you sent on other drills and now coming forward to talk about what's going on. So Anthony Montgomery Wilson pled guilty for using a firearm in relation to murder for hire for murdering SM, Stefan Mack, as consideration for the promise and agreement to pay a sum of money from individual C. Defendant Montgomery Wilson further admitted under oath that after murdering Savia Robinson, Lil Pab, he collected money that had been offered as consideration for Stefan Mack's murder. So are they saying that... Hang on a minute. Wait a minute. I'm not going to lie to you. The way this is worded, it sounds like Mike City AJ was sent on the drill to kill Lil Pab too. There's been unnamed people that were shooters in that have turned snitch. I think I could be wrong. I'm gonna just cross my T's and I'm gonna cross my I's and dot my T's on this one, all right? I'm gonna double check that, but it sounds the way that it's worded here. So Anthony Montgomery Wilson, who is Mike City AJ, all right? This is, he had his case. This is details of the case. AJ, defendant Marley, Mike City AJ, Anthony Montgomery Wilson, Preston Powell, all right? So there's protective order on all of this, all right? This has been going on for years. That's crazy. So it's saying, this is actually insane. This is a bombshell, and no one else has noticed this. It's saying Anthony Montgomery Wilson pled guilty to killing Stefan Mack as consideration for the promise and agreement to pay a sum of money from individual C. Right? So this is referring to the plea agreement in that case. This is crazy. So it says, defendant Mike City AJ, defendant Montgomery Wilson, further admitted under oath that after murdering Savia Robinson, unless that's a typo and it meant to say after murdering Stefan Mack, there's a small chance that that's a typo. If that's not a typo, then that's saying that Mike City AJ was sent dispatched on the drill to go and kill Lil Pap. Part of me feels like that could be a typo, because it would make sense if it said he admitted under oath that after murdering Stefan Mack, he collected money that had been offered as consideration for Stefan Mack's murder. That's actually a little bit mental. I think it could be a typo. If it's not a typo, they're saying Mike City AJ was on the drill to kill Lil Pap, so he was a frontline shooter. Now, it says government informed defense counsel it was considering filing a superseding indictment before trial that would make the Chicago murder of Stefan Mack and the attempted murder of Alexander Witherspoon in Georgia. That was the 2019 attempted murder with King Von, Lil Durk, Bezu, and AAB Hella Bands, as relevant as direct evidence at trial. And to be fair to the feds, less than a month after basically Mike City AJ says, I'm going to snitch on Durk, I'm pleading guilty and I'm going to cooperate against Durk, which is the smartest thing he could do, to be honest. Less than a month, the state are basically saying, look, Durk, yo, we're letting you know, speedy trial and all that, bro, but we got you on another murder, bro. Like, we got you on another murder for hire. This is not a good look. So then it says, on May the 20th, 2026, Preston Powell pled guilty in the Northern District of Illinois to use a firearm during and in relation to a crime of violence, murder for hire, for murdering Stefan Mack. So Preston Powell, that is Marley. Okay, so Mike City, AJ, and Marley, they're the guys that you've seen in the video doing that murder, allegedly. And basically, they're pleading guilty. They're saying, yeah, fuck it. Yeah, we killed Stefan Mack, but we did it for a cash bounty for his murder, and he participated in the conspiracy to murder SM and collect payment. Now, the fact that we're not seeing SR mentioned makes me think this is actually a typo. And it was SM Stefan Mack, because I think for those guys to be on the Lil Pab drill is insane. But if that's what it is, that's what it is, man. That's crazy. So let me zoom in a little bit more. The government confirmed to defense counsel that will be superseding with the Vicar murder charge by June the 3rd. So they said to Durk, they said ahead of time, a week ahead of time, they said, look, yo, we're going to hit you with this new murder. Everyone's telling on you, and it's only recent. So no speedy trial. We just found out you out here doing more murder for hires, allegedly. So on June the 3rd, the grand jury returned the third superseding indictment, adding 2 additional counts, including Vicar murder and conspiracy to commit stalking. As set forth below, the murder for hire allegations previously charged in the second superseding indictment are directly relevant to proving the Vicar murder. Defendant Wilson, Didi, and Lindsay filed a renewed motion to sever. They said, let us out of this trial with Durk. Durk's got too much going on. We ain't got nothing to do with that. And they're saying, ain't no way. Defendant Houston filed a motion to sever or continue the trial based on a need for additional time to prepare for trial. They're saying, look, I want to sever or at least have more time to find out what's going on. You got more murders on me. I need to work out if I was involved in those. And they're saying then Durk filed the current motion to sever the case into 2 trials, an August 2026 trial on counts 2 through 5, and a later trial on the Vicar charges count 1 through 6. He wants to just pick and choose which murders he gets charged with and which he deals with. Can't I just have this murder and then worry about that one later? It's not going to fly. So this is the government's investigation superseding charges, and soon we're going to start seeing new evidence that we haven't seen before. It says, as set forth above, after learning that defendant Banks had booked multiple international flights following the arrest of his co-conspirators, the government arrested Durk and charged the defendants in the first superseding indictment. As a result of the arrests and other search warrants executed in or around October 2024, the government seized a number of digital devices. Delete my iCloud if the fear's really on me, though. I fell down to my knees when the law came. The government seized approximately 23 devices on the day that the warrants were executed and the defendants were arrested. 23 devices. How many phones? That's nearly 4 phones a person. That's nearly 4. Each one of you had multiple phones. You cooked, right? Notably, because most of the devices were encrypted, the government didn't get access to the data right away, but they always get there eventually. This encryption stuff, nonsense. Oh, Signal, Telegram. Bro, they stole that shit, bro. They've taken all of that. They're getting all of that, bro. You nonsense. You think you're smarter than the feds. Following the arrest, the government continued to investigate uncharged co-conspirators and other criminality linked to the Banks gang enterprise, including through proffering multiple cooperating co-conspirators and seeking additional warrants to search for and seize evidence related to Rico and Vicar, hereafter the enterprise evidence, *7. For example, in February 2025, the government sought and obtained rollback warrants to search for enterprise evidence dating back to 2019 from iCloud accounts belonging to co-conspirators 3, pretty sure that's Bezu, and 4. Co-conspirators 3 and 4, sorry. In September 2025, the government obtained warrants to search a social media account belonging to defendant Banks. 2 contraband devices that defendant Banks used to have unmonitored communications while incarcerated, Apple Watch probably, and an iCloud account associated with defendant Banks' contraband device. So we're getting the iCloud from the Apple Watch. To date, the government's produced approximately 4.5 terabytes of digital evidence from 49 digital devices. Them some rookie numbers, bro. David got like, 10, 20 terabytes, okay? You need to push them numbers up. And there's like 20 phones. Anyway, as the government continued its investigation, including a review of voluminous lots of electronic records, it found significant gang enterprise evidence. There's going to be a lot more. Among other things, the government identified numerous text messages by and between enterprise members discussing the racketeering activity alleged in the third superseding indictment, including communications about identifying suspected informants, among others. For example, in August 2023, Durk sent a group message to co-conspirators and enterprise members, including Dee, stating that a suspected government informant and shooter during the 2022 LA murder of Lil Pab was just ready to snitch. Blood clear as day, he gon' tell soon. Uh-oh. Defendant Banks then reassured the group, sending the follow-up text, as long as we don't break, they can tell them whatever. Not how it works, chum. Not how it works. Evidence collected during the investigation also showed that enterprise members took significant steps to prevent law enforcement detection and conceal evidence. Before I go any further, look, if anybody is out there planning a murder, and I would suggest you just don't do it, but if you do go through with it, just you and your homies that do it, when you're in the car after you do it, you should say, hey, here's the deal. We never ever talk about this ever again to anyone ever on any device in any form. We do not talk. We don't even acknowledge that this is even a thing. We never. Because you on here talking about blood ready to snitch clear as day. They ain't gonna, as long as we don't break, they can tell them whatever. You'd have all been better off shutting your fucking mouths. Shut the fuck up. Shut up. Shut up. Shut up. Nope. 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 Don't know what. Murder? What? What? I don't know. I reckon I'd be a good criminal, but I never break the law. Anyway, so they took significant steps to prevent law enforcement detection and conceal evidence. For example, in a July 2023 group text message thread between defendant Banks, co-conspirator 6, and other Banks gang enterprise members, defendant Banks instructs the group to delete the text thread and start a new one. Good idea. You'd have been better off just deleting it yourself and starting it. Don't tell. See what? You instruct. Oh, so you an instructor. You a director. All right. You directing the scene. You in charge. You the kingpin, blood, right? Yeah. You'd have been better off just shutting the hell up. These guys are dumb as hell. So after co-conspirator 6 sent a voice recorded message to the group suggesting police had recently arrested someone and were asking about Durk, co-conspirator 6 and Banks gang enterprise members. Shouldn't even be a conversation. Someone gets arrested. Who? What? But no, you're all in the group chat and you're like, oh, let's start a new group. That's going to help. What, a new group chat on the same phone with the same numbers? You are very simple. Co-conspirator 6 then sends instructions to the group on how to further conceal evidence by deleting text messages from iCloud storage. Doesn't work, doesn't do anything. Waste of time, waste of finger energy. Additionally, the co-conspirators often use multiple burner phones and would dispose of the phones after violence to prevent law enforcement from obtaining relevant information, as defendant Banks did after Savia Robinson's murder in Los Angeles. As noted above, the government has currently identified 14 of the phone numbers used by defendant Banks during the relevant time. Didn't make a goddamn shred of difference. Oh, I've got the burner phone. I'm going to use the burner phone at the scene of the crime in the same city that the murder went down, that I'm there for no reason, and then I'm going to throw it away. They're not going to work out all the different 14 phone numbers that I've used. Yes, they are. Yes, they did. As a result, the grand jury returned the third superseding indictment, alleging racketeering enterprise, the Banks gang enterprise. They said, fuck all that OTF shit. This is bigger than OTF. OTF, the label. All right, don't worry about OTF. Banks, the banks, you all under Banks. All right. As set forth in the third superseding indictment, members and associates of the gang enterprise committed violence on behalf of the enterprise, including the following. The murder of Stephon Mack in Chicago, January 27th, 2022. After murdering Stephon Mack, the Chicago defendants, Mike City AJ and Marley, co-conspirator 7 and 8, discussed collecting the bounty for killing Stephon Mack from Durk and the Durk Banks gang enterprise. Specifically, Marley sent a text message to Mike City AJ saying, what's up with OTF? What do you mean they not paying? In response, Montgomery wrote, we wait until Durk comes up here on the 17th. And he went up there for the $1 million worth of game, and he had $1 million on the table, and he probably put back in $980,000 back in the bank. All right, dummy. They've not said it outright, but they're inferring that he paid the hitters with all that cash he had on the table at $1 million worth of game. You dummy. The attempted murder of Alexander Witherspoon in Atlanta, February 5th, 2019. As alleged in the third superseding indictment, they attempted to murder this person, including Durk and King Von Davon Bennett. King Von was the problem in all of this. Durk should have just never got down with King Von. And began as a coordinated botched robbery attempt. Ooh, what's footnote 11 saying? Discovery related to the attempted murder of Alexander Witherspoon was initially produced on February 7th, 2025. Additional discovery was produced on June 22nd. But none of that matters because Durk been known about that. We've seen him in court. He defended this whole situation. It's not a surprise. So, the argument, number 3. Defendant's sole basis for severance is that the joinder of the vicar charges on the August 20th trial would imperil his speedy trial rights under the Sixth Amendment. All right. Defendant Banks doesn't claim there's been a Speedy Rights Trial Act violation, the absence of which renders a Sixth Amendment violation unusual. As explained below, they're going to give some case law as to why this makes no sense. That constitutional analysis is factually and legally unsupported, is cap. All right. The Ninth Circuit law compels a joint trial on all properly joined charges in the TSI, third superseding indictment, which will ensure a streamlined and orderly presentation of evidence, conserve judicial resources, and minimize risk to witnesses. Holding 2 trials, including one that pretends the enterprise allegations doesn't exist. Very good point. You just want to do the murder, and I just want to do the other murder, and I want to sever it, and I want all of my hitters to be separate. And they just had this genius idea of doing it themselves, and I just had this genius idea of just having just accidentally having all my hitters do murders for me. And let's just pretend that the whole criminal enterprise that's organizing all of this doesn't exist. It's nonsense. That would deprive a jury of a complete understanding of the alleged gang enterprise, including how and why the LA murder occurred. The murder of Stefan Mack was like, you established all of the hierarchy, you established all of the points in the plan and exactly what was going to go down. We know exactly how this is going to play out. So defendant Banks should be tried on all charges contained in the third. So it says Durk should be tried on all charges contained in the third superseding indictment. Durk bears the burden of making a strong showing to justify severance. He's got to prove it, and they're giving case law. It says the severance isn't warranted unless a joint trial would violate his rights. A district court does not abuse its discretion unless a joint trial is so manifestly prejudicial as to require the exercise of discretion in but one way, by ordering a separate trial. So serious consideration of judicial economy is appropriate. They're going to waste all these judicial resources letting Durk just have a smorgasbord of different trials and just separate all the trials into, why don't you just have 500 little micro trials for every time the trigger was pulled? You know, it's nonsense. So a joint trial on all counts in the third superseding indictment promotes judicial economy. It's not going to waste resources. It ensures the jury has all the evidence necessary to evaluate the gang murder in the indictment. Every count in the TSI incorporates the indictment's allegations regarding the racketeering enterprise and its object and its manner and means. Even if the enterprise allegations were not incorporated into the murder for hire counts, the government's evidence, including defendants' admissions and anticipated co-conspirator testimony to prove the murder for hire conspiracy, is the same evidence necessary to prove the Vicar murder. Indeed, the Vicar murder charge wholly incorporates the Los Angeles murder for hire scheme because the Vicar element is satisfied when the defendant commits murder, 1, to maintain position with a racketeering enterprise, to receive something in financial value from the enterprise, and the Vicar statute requires proof the criminal organization exists, the organization is a racket, that the defendants committed a violent crime, and that they acted for the purpose of promoting their position in the gang or getting something of value from the enterprise. Vis-a-vis, you all got big boosts. You got paid Rex. You got put on that OTF album. You all got rewarded handsomely by the Durk criminal enterprise. It is very bad. So a joint trial also serves another compelling person. It minimizes the risk to witnesses who have agreed to cooperate against Durk and his co-defendants. Now, here is where it gets very interesting. There have already been multiple threats to cooperating witnesses and their family members in this case, as well as outside spectators who have shown their willingness to violate the court rules. There's a photograph taken during the hearing that was published online that was not supposed to happen. That was really bad. There's been efforts to publicly intimidate suspected witnesses. That's been put in a government's motion to impanel an anonymous jury, and they've listed a bunch of examples of attempts to identify and intimidate the cooperating witnesses. It's bad. You guys screwed up with that one. Requiring these witnesses to repeat their testimony in multiple trials, including duplicating the extra precautionary security measures court staff and the U.S. Marshals will undoubtedly have to take to attend these witnesses' travel and testimony, strongly militates in favor of a joint trial. I ain't never heard militates before. Let's see what militates mean. Militates. militates is the third. Militates. The third person singular present tense verb of the militate, which means to have substantial weight, influence, or effect on a situation. Okay, using the phrase militates against, meaning to serve a strong factor that prevents or makes something unlikely to happen. His boyish appearance militates against getting an early promotion. All right, Google AI. Anyway, we're done with that. So, yeah, they're going to militate that shit, basically. All right. Nonetheless, Durk's asked the court to set aside the facts that compel a joint trial and instead sever the Vic accounts based on a hypothetical future violation of his constitutional right to a speedy trial. That argument lacks merits. It's nonsense. To start, it's unclear what precise delay defendant Banks asserts would be unconstitutional. Durk requested the continuance originally between November and October for 11 months. So a minute ago you wanted to delay it 11 months. Now you're shrieking about your rights. Okay. The time period between October 2025 and the current trial was requested by the co-defendants, who he's joined for trial, and no severance was granted. That was only 10 months. Durk cannot plausibly contend that the first 11 months he requested were unconstitutional. Facts. He screwed himself with that. Nor does he provide any case law that supports the purported unconstitutionality of the subsequent 10 months, all of which was requested by his co-defendants and authorized by the express terms of the Speedy Trial Act. You're cooked, all right? These prosecutors are not playing around, all right? Crazy. Given the framing of the defendant's motion, i.e. if the court doesn't sever the third superseding indictment, Durk would not proceed to trial on August 20th. He appears to argue that any delay past August 20th would be unconstitutional. This has no basis in case law. There's no examples. This is true here where the lack of a Speedy Trial Act violation is evident in the United States versus Nance. But it basically says the provision of a speedy trial as intended to bar any Sixth Amendment speedy trial claim would be an unusual case in which the time limits of the Speedy Trial Act have been met, but the Sixth Amendment right to speedy trial has been violated. So it basically saying, look, you got your rights, but like you're all making these reasonable requests to move things around. And it was all good. It was all good for you getting 11 months at the start when you wanted it. Now you're worried about your rights. Moreover, throughout this case, defendants have filed multiple motions that independently provide a basis for excludable time, including Durk's multiple pretrial motions to dismiss and the currently pending motion to sever. Okay, so I'm going to skip ahead a little bit because we're going around the woods here. You're getting the gist. They're not having it, all right? They're not having it. It's a load of nonsense saying government sandbaggery or gamesmanship. That's not what's going on. The government superseding was done in good faith. They found out about the new murders. They found out about the new bodies. The investigation developed, and they let you know a week before we're going to hit you with more murder charges, and they did exactly what they said. This is quite a good little section as well. It says, to the extent that defendants believe the investigation could have proceeded faster, the defendant's own conduct contributed to the investigation's complexity. The defendants went to great lengths to conceal their criminality using coded language, discussing their criminal conduct, and they used multiple burner phones. They tried to identify and intimidate witnesses that would cooperate against them, and they deleted and destroyed evidence that would incriminate them. So basically, your right to a speedy trial, bro, this trial's taking ages because of all the shit that you guys laid down to make it hard for us to work it out. And then it says the defendant's argument that the government took the Chicago incident off the table when it withdrew its motion to admit it under Rule 404 breezes past the developments in that case. The guys that you had doing the hits pled guilty and snitched on you. That's new info. April 2026, that just happened. We've been speculating that you were responsible for that for a while, but now they're actually locked in. Okay, they admitted under oath that they murdered Stefan Mack to collect a bounty payment from Individual C. That's either gonna be Durk or that's gonna be one of Durk's generals. Okay, it was committed on behalf of the bank's gang enterprise. Text messages described where the Chicago hitters basically discussed collecting the money from Durk. It all lined up. Video files seized from his digital devices. Don't let me find out that he had. Oh, God. As set forth in the government's revised disclosure related to music admissions, which defendant Banks attached in Exhibit 1 to his motion, media seized from co-conspirator 7 phone. Okay. This basically says it depicts him and multiple individuals holding large amounts of cash at or immediately after meeting with Durk on February the 17th. So you really telling me that, like, Mike City AJ dancing around holding up all that money happened right after they linked up with Durk on the 17th? And they said, what's up with OTF when we getting the money? Bro, that shit's crazy. Jailhouse confession by one of the Chicago defendants. Oh, no. While incarcerated on other charges, co-conspirator 7 made various recorded admissions during a Perkins operation about his motive for murdering Stefan Mack and collecting payments from the bank's gang enterprise, members and associates. Following both Chicago defendants pleading guilty and stating under oath they killed Stefan Mack to collect a bounty, the government intends to admit portions of the recorded confession at trial. Oh, my God. You admitted to a snitch in jail, and then you said, fuck it. I'm that dumb. Let's just snitch on Durk. Crazy, okay? So basically, it's the exact same modus operandi to the LA murder of Lil Pab. It proves the operation and existence of a continuing racket. And even though Durk's displeased with the government's decision to supersede and include the murder of Stefan Mack, the defendant's preference that less evidence be presented against him doesn't amount to any legally binding authority. This is low-key like legal talk of just like the ultimate clapback. Just because you prefer that less evidence be presented to him, there's no legal basis for that. You're a dummy. Okay. The government's decision to bring additional charges was in good faith. We already heard that. We get the gist on that. Okay. So Durk's claim that any further continuance would violate his speedy trial is baseless. It's not happening. It's nonsense. It's not true. They don't think that Durk. It's just these are the legal arguments in the case law basically saying that there's absolutely no recognition of Durk's like rights being violated. So I've basically got to the end of that. There's nothing else interesting other than a bunch of really not interesting to you, but if you're a legal nerd, you know, legal cases that give examples. But here is where we get to some hot shit. Okay, Exhibit A. Oh dear. Okay, from Zoo. It blanked out, I guess, the number and Durk's number. That says Zoo. Gang, I was in the zoo shooting shit with Zoo. I'm King Vaughn, brother. Who are you? Right, Bezu. From Bezu. He says he liked who asked what's to us. I'm guessing the cops asked. They're saying the police. So Durk is liking it saying who asked what's to us? What's this person to us? And it says Lil Dude, from Lil Dude, Lil Brother. I'm guessing that's Durk. They're saying police. Then Zoo says 30 said ATF. And then this is Durk. I guess this is Durk again. Saying delete thread and start new one. And then this is Zoo. Why wasn't Zoo arrested? No one's answered that for me yet. Why wasn't Zoo arrested? Why wasn't Zoo arrested? And they said when y'all delete, click on that edit sign and clear all deleted to. It's the new update, so it won't stay in the iCloud. You're teaching everybody how to do this. And there's a tiny little screenshot there where he's actually got. I'm not gonna lie to you. That looks a little bit like. Let me zoom in. That tiny little message looks like it says blood, like this is Durk in his phone saved. And they got all of that from Bezu's phone. So Bezu's sending a screenshot of his text and showing him exactly how to delete it with Durk, aka blood in there. And you got the blood emoji. That's crazy. Okay, so look, this is wild. I think that this is really bad news for Durk. It is not a huge update, but again, bro, they got all your messages. They got 24 phones. They got, why wasn't Bezu arrested in this? Why wasn't Bezu? Can someone from Chicago please tell me why Bezu wasn't arrested? Because this doesn't make no sense. He all up in there teaching people how to change the iCloud. Why ain't you part of the bank's gang enterprise? Don't make no sense, man. Anyway, I'll catch you guys in the next video. It was a long one, but I wanted to read the whole paperwork and I thought, why not do it together? It's crazy. I'll keep you guys posted as soon as I get an update. That's it for now. Go and watch my David update. I was just at the courthouse. I'm actually going to do another David update in a bit because I know people have been waiting for me to talk on the David stuff. And there was actually quite a big update in court today. So if you want to know about that, go watch that video. Thank you so much for your support. Go and watch the documentary I dropped on Sammy the Bull and his 19 murders on my main channel. I'm glad everyone's appreciating that. Oh, Ross, you only ever talk about rapping gangsters. Oh, my God, you only talk about a certain kind of person on this channel. You're painting people in a bad light. No, Sammy the Bull, Italian-American mobster, 19 bodies, and he snitched and got away with it. Go and check that out, all right? You can't say we ain't got diversity of content over here. I love it. See you guys in the next video. I'm out, gang. Peace. Bye.